Hi everybody. Well, since Siddharth and I consider Raamdeo ji our guru in terms of being able to foresee things as to how investments, economy, markets, companies grow, I'm going to bowl the first ball to you, Raamdeo ji. The topic, as we all have been discussing for the past hour, is vision of India in 2030. Let me first put a caveat on the table. If we had discussed Vision 2030 in the year 2020 in January, we would have gone awfully wrong. Who would have known that about 20 months would be washed off? So I want to place that caveat on the table. We are assuming that these extraordinary black swan events are not a regular thing. After all, the previous flu was 100 years ago, the Spanish flu in 1918. So we are assuming a reasonably, stable set of events, and all the projections will be subject to some extraordinary developments that may come our way, the black swan events. But that said, Raamdeo ji, how are you looking at in the Indian economy, markets, purchasing power in 2030?
Yeah. Good evening, friends, and it's a pleasure to be talking to Lata from here. This is the benefit of post-COVID, you know. So, yeah, coming back to Indian economy, I would go by the long-term trends, what has happened in India for the last 15, 20 years and what is likely to happen, because as you said, this COVID has happened. I don't know, now we are into the war, and Russians are saying it's a third world war. Russians say it's a third world war. Nobody wants to listen to them. Everybody is saying that they वो डराने के लिए बोल रहे हैं सर. लेकिन it's a complex thing. I mean, we thought that it will be over in 7 days, and now it's already 62, 63 days. So, a lot of these uncertainties come. Hello. Yeah. So, a lot of uncertainties come, and time is the only kind of medicine for that. Over a period of time, everything, like when war started, ruble traded 140 ruble to a dollar, as if Russia is finished economically. Now it's back to actually higher than pre-war. It's now 73, 74 ruble to a...
So mean reversions will happen.
Mean reversion, and then the world realizes that right now everybody wants to be Atmanirbhar. First Modi started Atmanirbhar, now everybody wants to be Atmanirbhar. But it's an interdependent world. How can, I don't know from where this mic comes from. We are so interdependent. I don't think we can take away the interdependency. And that's how the world has progressed in the last 30, 40 years. And I would believe that going forward also, this interdependence will take its logical course. The guys who are coming on the way, they'll be cleaned up in one way or other. So I would think that the march of the human race, the Indian economy and other economies will go at the pace at which we have seen recently in last 10, 15 years. And that's where we come to about 6, 7%.
Assuming a growth of?
Say 6 to 7% and 5 to 6% kind of inflation. So that gives you upwards of double digit, 10 to 11% nominal GDP. Now the issue is that will the dollar rupee will be 75 after 10 years. If it is 75, then your dollar growth is at 10%. If that 75 goes to maybe 80, 85 or something, 2, 3% decline which you expect, that if that goes, then your instead of 10,
you have a 10% GDP.
Instead of that 8% dollar GDP growth rate. So if you do it 8%, it takes 9 years to double. If you do it 10%, it takes about 7 years to double. So you are at 22. In 29, you should be 6 trillion, or it was in 2030. That's what I think should be happening as far as the Indian GDP is concerned. Now, what it does, that incremental 3 trillion, the 3 trillion basket is going to be very different than the first 3 trillion basket. It is going to be very discretionary. It is going to be very credit intensive. Credit intensity today is about, say, 50% of GDP. Am I correct? About 150 lakh crores.
What is credit to GDP?
Credit to GDP is about 50%. But incremental will be almost one time. Or maybe 0.8, 0.9. I won't be surprised if it is one time.
So GDP itself is doubled, and credit to GDP is at 1 to 1.
So you can imagine
the multiplier.
So now you imagine the banks which are competent, even the largest of the banks. Who is there to underwrite 200 crores? Where is the capital? Where is the infrastructure? You know, that's the kind of opportunity we're talking
Okay,
about.
so again, one more question to him and
Of course.
we come to you. As you were speaking, Naveen and Manish have a fund, okay, in which 1,000 crore, sorry, I think it's a much larger fund. 20,000 crore has been invested. Or let me take a round figure of 10,000 crore. How will it be invested now? I mean, its size automatically is, say, 10 times in 10 years. Where will you invest it? How different will, today you're probably going to have 40% in banks. You will have perhaps metal companies if you're going to take the Nifty distribution. How different will it be in 2030?
Yeah. So, no, 2030 is the end.
Yes.
So you have
Okay.
to, you have
All
to
right,
visualize.
2026, 27.
Yeah, so you have to visualize the businesses, the companies which are going to be flourishing in 2030. The seeds are already shown. They might be 1,000 crore company, 3,000 crore company, 5,000 crore company, or a bank which could be 50,000 crore bank. Will it be a 5 lakh crore bank?
No, I'm asking you sectors. Will you be
Sec-
in housing?
Yeah.
Because there will be.
So it's all open. That is for the fund manager and where he sees the opportunity. See, because his understanding is not my understanding, or my understanding not his understanding. He has some comfort with certain management, certain companies, certain businesses, his own readings. That will decide. But broadly, the big businesses, whether it is IT, whether it is banking, whether it is insurance, your broking, your asset management, see, ultimately where money is made, where is the corporate profit pool? The 6 lakh crores profit जो बनता है, profit pool किधर है? तो वहीं आपको जाना पड़ेगा ना. जहाँ profit pool नहीं है, वहाँ पर तो क्या मतलब is finding oil in Ganga. अरे गंगा में पानी मिलेगा. You know, so he has to go where money is going to be made, where the money is there. Say like Siddharth's company, specialty chemicals. We are talking about it. So ऐसा लगता है कि that can become very large sector. So he has to find one or two entrepreneurs who not only see vision is for everybody, opportunities for everybody, for him also, and the guy who is the other side. He might be big, but he has to judge whether he can seize the opportunity. Can he get disproportionately benefited out of that opportunity? You know.
That question to you then.
So that is a call on the entrepreneurship of the person on whom he is betting. And that is where the fund manager's individuality of the individual role comes. Where he thinks that this guy has a way above. Because see, the character of the fund is not a benchmark fund. It's an absolute return fund. So that gives him a lot of peace. Okay, so he can buy and hold for 5, 7, 10 years. He can buy some amount which is unlisted also. It might get listed after 5, 7 years. And somewhere he'll go wrong also. But the way to invest is that truly investing is not about benchmark investing. Truly investing is about really making returns. And that will come when you are able to see future of the companies and you are able to understand and you put your money bets now and the future then evolves.
That's why you have a Q in your QGLP, and that's why it starts with Q. You look for the quality both of the product and of the entrepreneur. Okay, Siddharth, now I leave it to you to choose. How are you, first of all, positive on the growth story? And what gives you that positivity? Can you see clarity 5 years down the line or 8 years down the line in 2030? What do you see as growth drivers?
So Lata, if I'm audible, right?
Yes.
So I would speak more on specialty chemical and chemical segment because that is what
My question was with respect to specialty
Specialty.
chemicals. How positive are you and why?
So I am an extremely bullish person on specialty chemical and chemical businesses, and I have some logical reasons for that. So one of the major reason I feel is today India population is about 1.4 billion. Our per capita consumption of chemicals or products is the lowest compared to developed countries. The income levels, the disposable income levels of Indians is rising. And as Naveen was just mentioning in his talks that people from villages are going to come to Bangalore, and when they come to Bangalore, they would need house, they would need air condition and all of that. So all of that is going to culminate into a big spending, and I think this space is going to double in the next 3 to 4 years' time. Apart from this, the second is China plus one. I think one of the most talked about parameter is China plus one.
On China plus one, my detailed question to you is, are you seeing it in your life? Are you seeing Indian companies or Western companies wanting to include you or any other Indian company in addition to China or in place of China? Are you experiencing it?
Of course, there is a big experience, and that is what gives me this bullish So I'll give you an example. So last week I was traveling to Hyderabad and I was visiting one of the very large listed company. Typically Hyderabad people or pharma companies are in love with Chinese. They cannot think of their lives without buying anything from China. I have seen this shift after this 8 years and after this COVID especially, that they are willing to ask me if I can supply this particular product. They are willing to understand that if I start this product, China is going to crush the price. And they are willing to help me that, okay, we will help you to stabilize a particular capacity. Of course, any purchaser is inclined always to buy the cheaper raw material. But I think after COVID, people have learned that at least they want to de-risk themselves, at least a bit of it, to Indian suppliers.
20% more expensive, people have bought from you already.
People are willing to buy from you. Because also they see this uncertainty in supplies. Like today, Shanghai ports are all closed. People are still not aware when will all this return to normalcy. And if they know it, that if they don't support us today, companies like ours, what if it returns after 3 years? And then again, we are not ready for it. So people are willing to try us. Even multinationals, I was talking to a very large MNC called Bayer, which is Bayer or Bayer Crop. This is the first time they are asking us, okay, tell me what list of chemistries you are good at. And they are willing to think of how can we look at India.
That's a huge thing you're saying. Well, normally, you would go and push and say, मैं ये बनाता हूँ. They are actually telling you, तुम क्या-क्या बना सकते हो मेरे को दो.
Exactly.
It is as open as that.
Because अब उनको समझ गया कि boss, how much should we depend on China? Plus, honestly, I feel prices in China are also rising. Their environmental laws have become more stringent. I think manpower costs have increased in China dramatically. Government is not giving any more. So they are not giving these SOPs which they were giving to these chemical industry. So I think there is a lot of level playing now. And I think we will be benefit, of course, because our manpower is cheap compared to China, I feel. Our abilities are far higher. And we have, I think India is one of the countries where youth population is quite high. People are willing to work. And I think these parameters all put together will...
when we read the Indian media, we get this big time. That, China +1, apna time aa gaya. That,
right.
That feeling, that rhetoric is very much there. But when you read foreign media, you see a lot of mention of Vietnam. WSJ, Wall Street Journal is replete with stories of how this guy was sourcing from China and then now he has gone to Vietnam and he has so many problems. There isn't any one single point. They discuss other countries a lot. Right. So do you think we have a place under the sun or it may be grabbed by others?
See, I'll tell you very simple. The total spec chem or specialty chemical market today, China controls about 25-30%. India is just 3%. We have a large room to fill. Even if we double that in the next 3-4 years, we are taking a very minuscule portion out of the Chinese.
So there's place for us and for Vietnamese and whatever.
There is space for Indian, there is space for Vietnam, there is space for Brazil. But why Indians? I think we have learnt far ahead. The chemical space in particular, I have rarely seen chemicals coming from Vietnam. Plus petrochemicals, ultimately all spec chem are crude derived and we need petrochemical complexes, which at least India is present with Reliance and IOCL and BPCL. We have that conglomerates. To Vietnam to create all of it will take a lot of time. We are already there.
Fair enough. Raamdeo ji?
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I thought you wanted to ask him on this issue.
No, I think you asked about China plus, because opportunities, China is about $2 trillion, more than $2 trillion of export machine. We are at 400 billion. So, even, see, what happens is that in a $100 trillion global economy, China has, say, 10% allocation or 15% allocation. That is China's contribution. Now, in next 15 years, when the world goes from 100 trillion to 200 trillions, will the intensity of China will be same? My sense will be much lower. And opportunities will go to a lot of countries. See, it is not your birthright. नहीं, अभी चाइना का नहीं तो उसके बाद इंडिया ही, ऐसा नहीं है. It can be Vietnam, it can be, and depending on merits, like textile might go to Bangladesh, something else might go to, electronic manufacturing can go to Malaysia, Vietnam, but there are a lot of things where India has the birthright, because you have the local base, technology, scale, सब कुछ है जैसे केमिकल
And
we are
people,
we are at
labor.
3%. Now going from 3 to 6 is possible because all the bases are there. They can set up 2x capacity, 3x capacity. So I mean, this is one segment where my sense is that this is going to happen. So I think in some segments like software and all, India has that extra opportunity. You know, now added with that is PLI scheme. You know, so that is another thing. So I think this all that might also help in shifting the China Plus strategy out of China into India. And I'm quite sure other countries will also come out with some PLI
Scheme.
type of scheme,
Yeah.
which we are not aware of.
Yeah. I wanted to, that is the next set of questions to you.
Right.
How attractive is PLI scheme? And is that for fund managers and investors a safe bet that, you know, try and pick up companies which are in the PLI spectrum?
See, PLI scheme, I think government has really come up with interesting raw materials which India should produce.
Specialty chemicals, it's a good set of choice.
It is intermediates for pharmaceuticals majority because of course we need basic anti-diabetics like a metformin we need in India. We need a paracetamol in India. We need steroids in India. All these raw materials are only imported from China. So government has done a very good thing that, okay boss, metformin, what is an important raw material? DCDA. Let us have a PLI on DCDA. DCDA is never made in India. What is needed to make a dextromethasone steroid? A cytosterol based derivative is needed. Okay, let's put a PLI on it. So government has identified good products. But what Indians or some Indian producers have done is they have applied for these PLI schemes because government is only offering to 2 producers. Now you applied and you get the PLI because race is always there. But after 2 years, there is no penalty that boss, what if you don't succeed? That PLI scheme has gone for a toss. And a lot of companies have just grabbed these opportunities because of PLI hai. Now that PLI mil gaya, now they are going backward and seeing, okay, can we make this? And now going to their R&D labs. After 2 years, and the whole PLI scheme will not be as successful as the government has thought about it.
You know, I saw some fantastic numbers today when I was preparing for this discussion. Somebody said that 4 lakh crore of investments every year for the next 4 years is possible because of PLI. You're that optimistic?
Yeah, so all the state governments, they do their, whatever, investment mela or something like that.
Yeah.
And their lakhs and lakhs of crores are being pledged that we are going to set up this. The MOUs are being signed. So this is a little better than that, you know, but this is a little better. But I would agree with him that in some places it could be bigger than what they are thinking, but in a lot of places this gaps will be there. What the government is thinking in some PLI and what actually fructifies. Because I would not think so much about the technology and all, but just the economics. I mean, there must be very good reason why we are importing from China.
Absolutely.
You know, so if that reason, China is not going to reduce, they're not going to make themselves unviable. So you have to come out with some kind of process whereby, despite China being there, you still make sense. So customers are saying that we'll prefer to buy from you at the same price or maybe few percentage premium to that. But that 5% premium, if somebody gives, does it make sense for you to put up the plant and do it? Because all the risk is taken by you. You know, so I think at that level.
So I think this is an eye-opener that not every PLI license will fructify. Because
Absolutely.
people ne rumal dal diya because you want to reserve the seat, but you may not go and occupy the seat if it doesn't.
And one more thing to it is that some of these technologies, for instance, fermentation, which is little chemical thing, we have forgotten these processes. Because we have not done this in the last 20 years. And all of a sudden now government wants us under the PLI, okay, come back and start this. We have no clue where to start. We are lost. Chinese have developed these technologies and gone far ahead, improving their yields, efficiencies, their costs have become so competitive. So what they have done in 20 years, we cannot do that in 3 years. Let's face that.
No, I am willing to give up to 2030. My fundamental fear is they have captured 30% of the market and we are at 3% for a reason.
Right.
Are all those reasons removed?
Not really. And plus, the
We'll only
edge,
crawl.
we'll crawl, but the margins, the space is very high. There is a lot of there is a lot of play for spec chem companies who are willing to innovate, who are willing to get into R&D, who are willing to come up with interesting technologies. I mean, I can give you some instance like for instance, clean science and technology. We made a product, we are making a product which goes into cosmetics and UV blockers. This product was only made by Chinese. Today we are proud that because of our interesting catalytic technologies, Chinese have stopped their production. And we are the company who is exporting now to China. In fact, at a very rare instance, we are one of the few chemical companies where out of our total revenues, 40% is exported to China.
Okay, that calls for an applause.
So,
Genuinely competitive.
so technology is the key. PLI schemes are useful, but ultimately we need to invest in R&D, we need to invest in processes, we need to really put our brains behind it. Just a PLI scheme will not solve the purpose, and we cannot just go out and compete with Chinese who are there in this race for the last 20 years. And trust me on this, Chinese are hardcore warriors. Once they see you are there, they will go as well all out to make sure that you do not survive.
Yeah, they can undercut you seriously.
Of course.
But do you see the extent of specialty chemicals itself widening? I mean, you refer to metformin and a few other chemicals. Because you have succeeded in this, do you see this multiplying very quickly? Because that's what happened in software. You found success and then it spawned a whole set of companies from 1990 onwards. It's a flow that is still yielding results. New companies, new products, new markets.
See, when I started the business in 2006, when we started at Clean Science, by the time we were up in the production game, say 2009, we were really scared of even thinking of getting into Chinese market. We knew we will never be successful. But over the period when we improved our processes, when we improved our technology, and when we were able to send first material to China, that gave us that confidence that, boss, ye ho sakta hai. It is not that you can never sell anything to China. And today what I have seen is when we make our first dispatches to China rather than going to India.
Okay, so it need not be a smooth curve. It can be a steep incline also. When
Just one point. In software, what happened was, again, because of Y2K, the customers were pressed to solve the problem in those 2 or 3 years, whatever window was available, and they came in here to hire cheap, low-end talent.
Absolutely.
And then they realized that there is a vast talent, and they can do even complex stuff. So slowly, from $1 or $2 billion, now they become $180 billion. It has become the biggest mainstay of India's forex earnings. Okay. Now, chemical is also that bigger an opportunity, almost $700-800 billion opportunity. The only issue I see is that in software, you are not competing with Chinese price. See, it was Indian cost, American value. Here it is Indian cost, Chinese value.
Absolutely.
Because at a price level, finally you have to compete with China plus minus 5%. Not like the gap, $5 to $25. Here it is $5 to $5.50. So you have to be innovative in technology, and you have to maybe innovate in scale so that you can still survive, because if China reduces from 5 to 4.5, what will happen to you?
Absolutely.
So you have to be always worried about that.
Well, Raamdeo, to come back to the original issue of how you envisage the market when it is a $2 trillion or a $3 trillion economy to what it will be in, according to your calculations, in 8 years, a $6 trillion economy. Do you think this can falter because of the K-shaped recovery? It is very clear that in the past 2 years, GDP has grown only by 1.7%. Now we have the latest employment numbers. If you compare it to March 2020, the unemployment has risen by 1.7%. So clearly, the growth is small, but it has gone, predominantly to the upper part of the economy. And a larger part of the lower part of the K is underserved or unserved. So can that put a stop to the growth of the market? I mean, the migration from lower part of the K is...
But aggregate growth will still be there. Now, what will be the shape of growth? So initially, when you are coming out of the COVID, clearly in the COVID, the lower rung got worst hit. Everything was closed. So these guys who were on the roadside, they were doing small things, theater में काम कर रहे हैं, movie shooting में काम कर रहे हैं, सब बंद हो गया था. So clearly, the entrepreneurial class, they benefited at the cost of the lower end guys. But as the opening up happens, this K-shape, which is very intense today, will give way to much more broad-based recovery. I'm quite sure about it. So one is that. Second is that even on 10-year basis, if some lasting effect is there, economy will grow at 7%. Probably it will go faster. The issue is the benefit of that disproportionately will go to the upper end of the society, then very democratic way, well spread out. That may not happen. So that we have to see as it goes along.
I just want to put on the table a caveat over here. Among the economists, there is a debate that is it possible that only the upper part of the K grows and still the total ke liye 7% growth aa raha hai? Is that possible? Or if it keeps on narrowing, is that 7% itself going to be difficult? Because ultimately, you know, there can be some titan or someone who can keep selling to the upper part. But a Hindustan Unilever or a Tata Steel or a, you know, those that sell to the nation may find it timid.
Yeah. So
that there is a debate.
What makes me a little more comfortable is that of the GDP, the four components, CGI and EXIM looks very, very, you know, opportunistic right now. If you're talking about China plus policy, you see what happened last year. Despite all the trouble, we grew 30% in terms of exports, in dollar terms. We crossed 418 billion in merchandise and 250 billion in services. That services is equivalent to almost half a trillion because there is a complete value add out there. I mean, in software, when you do 180 billion, that is not as good as if you export a car of 180 billion, 70% is raw material. Here in $180 billion of services export, everything is a value add.
No,
So what I'm saying is, if in 2030, my services export is say 600 billion and my merchandise export is say just about $1 trillion, that itself is going to add on to your normal consumption, government expenditure and corporate capex. You know, so what I'm saying is this export machine has never worked on in India's GDP growth story broadly so far. You are a better person to judge, but has the export, EXIM, has ever played significant role in our 6-7% growth in last 20 years?
Now, I'll just put two caveats to it, again from economists. We have not done too badly in exports. Within the emerging market basket itself, we are the third best exporter for the last 30 years. From 1990, the pace of growth is third only to China, Vietnam and us. And Vietnam and us have been switching places also. So we've not done that badly if you look at the international comparison, simply because our size is big. From our point of view, exports may be small, but from a global point of view, emerging markets comparison, we have not done so badly. And secondly, just as you say that we should not become mayus by last 2 years COVID, a tinge of caution on don't get carried away by the exports of the last 1 year. And I'll give you two reasons for this. One, every country benefited because the three large central banks printed money like no tomorrow. US printed cash, doubled its balance sheet from 4.5 trillion to 9 trillion. ECB did much the same, BOJ did somewhat similar. So everywhere purchasing power increased. So every country's exports increased. Our share of exports in total global trade did not increase. It increased from our historical perspective. Everybody's done well. Secondly, because so much of money, see, 100 goods में $100 था. अभी 110 goods पे $200 आ गया. तो हर एक good का price बढ़ गया. A large part of our 400 billion exports, not entirely, it was a volume growth, but a substantial part is also inflation. We have to just keep these caveats in mind. Let us not extend the success of this 400 billion as a regular feature for the next 8 years. I would be a little skeptical.
You know, to support your argument, our imports are growing even faster. So my current account balance has
Deficit
not
is
improved,
increased.
in fact increased. So it doesn't add to the GDP growth. But the economic activity definitely gets galvanized. You know, and if you think that oil is going to be $200, then I think the story is different. But if oil remains at $70, $80 and my software export goes to $250, $300 billion, I think it will be a different story. And let me tell you, if you ask me what is going to the probabilities, because future is all probabilistic. So probability wise, I would think oil will remain, say, at best at 100, 90, 100 on a steady basis, and software export will definitely go to $350 billion. Then you see the current account deficit and strength of dollar rupee. And if by chance rupee remains here, and my nominal grows at about 10% also, I'm home.
You're not only home, the previous experience of the first decade when oil prices continuously went up, actually one of our biggest buyers are Middle Eastern countries, the oil exporting countries. So that purchasing power also pummels our exports. So net, every time there is an increase in oil, that entire thing is not our trade deficit, because some payback also comes in the form of higher exports. Your point is taken on that. All I'm saying is that let's not be too, one track in extrapolating the future from the present growth in exports. There are some one-offs in this export also. But I want to come back to the original theme that we are looking at, Vision 2030. That when you look at 2030 and a 6 trillion economy, how different will it be? I mean, how do people consume when you have $1,000 per capita? And how is the consumption when it is $2,500? How different does it look? What's your take on that?
Well, it's very tough to see. You have to go to a city where, all the cities are not at $2,000. Mumbai is more like a $4,000-5,000. So the whole country will become like Mumbai, and Mumbai will go to become more like, say, Bangkok or something like that. So you can see the way, like you don't see. You go to a city like, say, Pune. Pune is far more prosperous than average country. So if my tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities become Pune, then what happens? Your hospitals are... See, what is prosperity? When you get prosperity, you get urban infrastructure. And in Mumbai, I remember, I stay in Worli. In Worli, when we were walking on the promenade, sea face, there was a big, kind of a damage. And it took 5 years for them to fill it up. So much so they had fenced it for walking. Now, same place, they are coming with a coastal road. This is the difference of $1 trillion and $3 trillion. And they want to do it in 3 years flat. So the kind of size of the infrastructure projects will get, the size of the houses. South Bombay in 2003, there were no cranes. You ask them. There were no cranes, no constructions. Today, you get out from here, there's so many towers and all of them are 60 stories, 70 stories. This is not without money. Who is going to buy? 50, 60 crores a flat is not a common thing.
So one of the biggest beneficiaries will be real estate.
Real estate, because we are service economy, as we talked. For 100 square feet of office space, you need 1,000 square feet of living space. So if you do 1 million new jobs, fresh new job, absolutely fresh, you need 100 million square feet of office. And you need 1 billion square feet of living space. So you imagine if by chance this software export boom of 15% continues for 3 years, 3 years only, you would have recruited 3 million guys. So you need 300 million square foot of office space and 3 billion square foot of potential housing. And you think of it, on that 3 billion square foot, what kind of mortgage you are talking about? And what it does to the banking system. So, it has its own multiplier effect.
Fair enough. So clearly real estate and finance, economy-facing areas are positive. To come back to chemicals, actually, what other trends do you see? I mean, you spoke about the specialty chemicals that are, if you have to broaden the trend, what other trends in specialty chemicals? Do you see more coming in? How do you visualize 8 years down the line?
See, I see, of course, with this geopolitical tensions, with this COVID, there is blips in the economy of our chemical zone, but it is also leading to consolidation. The weakest in the link will not survive. The people who are willing to accept these challenges, people who are willing to get into backward integration, people who are willing to try these new things and make themselves a little bit interdependent are going to survive and are going to go a long way ahead. So this is definitely the trend I am seeing. I am seeing people are talking about green technology, people are talking about sustainability, people are talking about EHS, which definitely 5 years ago, I did not see this. We were, I think, one of the very few companies when we started, the whole motive was to come up with cleaner processes, and hence we designed the name as Clean Science and Technology. We thought, thoda karenge but saaf karenge. We'll do little bit, but we'll do in a cleaner fashion.
Now you get a premium for ESG.
And now see, after 15 years, that has played out so well in our favor, and we are getting premium for that. So, but I think now, looking at us or looking at this whole spec chem zone, I see not only us, even the newer entrepreneurs which I see coming up are also looking at coming up with newer technologies, coming up with newer processes. Today, the employment which we were hiring chemists, we were hiring people from villages, small institutes, small colleges. The salary levels have gone up dramatically in chemical zones. There is shortage of people in chemical industry today because everybody is expanding, everybody is growing, and all of us need people. So again, we have the salary levels which were at 5 years ago is dramatically different, which is today. This will further lead to disposable income increasing. To again answer your point, the youth today is willing to spend a lot of money on improving lifestyle. They want to have the gadgets which others also own. I see iPhones even in places like us in Kurkum, where people are coming up with iPhones, you know. So this is going to be the new trend. This is the new youth. People are willing to spend, and with e-commerce, life has become so easy. People sitting in offices.
Consumer economy.
The consumer economy is growing. People are not so much thinking, okay, about future generations and saving. That thing is there, but not as much as maybe.
I think Raamdeo ji's and my generation had to save for our own house, and because we were so worried about having a roof, we saved for our child's house also. But I don't think our children will do that. So, genuinely, that would mean more consumer economy.
Yeah, generally, see, I think consumption is function of how confident
My
you
son
are.
spends much more than me.
Yeah, but he's confident about, he's very qualified, and there is, because of this entire population and everything, the jobs are not that difficult. See, maybe not the very high quality jobs, but now the kids are not completely, if they are competent, if you are a chartered accountant, you are an MBA, you are a good technology guy, there is no dearth of job. You resign, I mean, I interview so many people, sir, I have already resigned. I said, this is crazy. I mean, you resigned a beautiful job and now you are interviewing with me. So, मेरे को पहले डर लगता था कि भाई whether you have been asked to go or something, but they are very peaceful. So, I think it is job security also to some extent, and not only in India. Now they are looking at global opportunities. You know, they are studying globally and they have the global opportunities. So, I think to some extent that fear is gone, that I will be left without any jobs if I miss on that. So, that confidence that I can earn 10 lakhs rupees or 20 lakhs rupees, 30 lakhs, that gives them confidence that let me blow today. We didn't have that confidence. Ki bhai we have to save for a house. That 30 years, 40 years it takes our people to save for buying a house because there was no mortgage.
Yes.
So now people are buying at the age of 30, 32, they are buying mortgage and mortgage-backed house, which was not the situation when we grew up.
I'll just add to it. COVID has also made us quite brave because a lot of people lost jobs. And you see the amount of startups which have come during the COVID times, in food segment particular. I think in my society or society across, every 10th house has a brand of food and they are trying to sell. And this has changed how people think. People are not so worried even if
People are
they
becoming
lose.
entrepreneurial.
People are starting to become entrepreneur, and plus of course these VCs and these funds and the valuation games which is happening, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. So that is also changing the mind space. People are willing to take these 2 years sabbatical, try something, and if it doesn't work, okay, fine, no problem, we'll get back to the job.
I'm not so sure that is going to be a lasting trend. That may be for a few days, but I take your point that one trend has clearly changed. In our times, mere apne kind of movies need not be made. That insecurity of job that we saw in the 50s and 60s through the movies perhaps is an India that has definitely been overcome.
This is a gift of $2,000 per capita. This is the gift of the $2,000 per capita. When it goes to 4,000 or 5,000, you see this confidence going through the roof. Because there will be multiple jobs. You know?
Now let me come to the constraints. How do you play this ESG? Do you think that is going to make things expensive? Do you think climate may put some stop? Because, like for instance, the heat wave has resulted in the wheat crop, suicides in Punjab every day because the wheat crop has failed. So do you think growth can be stymied by climate? How would you, does it interfere when you think of investments?
Frankly, I don't understand this climate change, how predictably you can say that things have really gone out of hand. Currently, you're talking about heat wave. After 5-6 months, you'll talk about, winter, deep winter, so cold wave or something like that. So we don't know.
Some central bankers, notably someone like Urjit Patel, who wrote that, if we thought Indian economy is 100, now let us start thinking of it as 95. Because every year some form of climatic change, and he was not referring to India, he was referring to global economy, potential output is definitely getting chipped away because of unexpected climatic. But that's a larger question. I'm asking you more specifically in investment. Is ESG a very big touchstone for you?
See, good governance and all, they're definitely part of the, when we say Q, quality of business, quality of management, clearly, they were not that explicit as ESG, but clearly we are practicing that. But now you'll be much more explicit and you say that, okay, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And actually in the given current crisis, see, ESG has created havoc in the global economy. You don't want to invest. The banks don't want to clear any of the projects for, say, coal expansion, production of coal. Now, Germany also wants to fire the coal-fired plants. From where will you get the coal? So coal is going to go through the roof. So someday somebody has to say, bhai, ESG is just a concept. Maybe it is good for 30, 40, 50 years, but right now, to ride the crisis out. But what happens is, whenever you come out with this kind of thing, the investment cycle stops. See, you are saying, I want to be ESG compliant in 2050, 2070, but banker will stop paying today. There is no investment. So it is creating its own crisis. So I don't know in what way ESG will come back. Of course, this concept is born and people have given, but I would think that there will be a lot of rethinking what should be included in ESG and what should not be included.
I think we are summarizing and throwing the dais open, throwing the panel open to questions. Key takeaways so far: the kind of growth you see when you go from $1,000 per capita to $2,500 or $3,000 per capita is vastly different. The extent of consumption that can come in and the kinds of consumption that come in can be seminally different. So in the next 10 years, clearly the opportunity for India is here as we are transiting into that level of consumption. Added, the icing on the cake is the fact that the geopolitical situation seems to be favoring India because of the China +1 syndrome, which seems to be not just an India trend, it seems to be a global trend, and therefore we should be having more opportunities coming our way. As well, the government itself with PLI, it seems to be in a right track in terms of capturing the manufacturing opportunity. But all said and done, I just want to leave one caveat. When I read some of the old articles of the 1960s, which were still relevant when I was in school and college, at that time there was very much a feeling, in mid-60s especially, that India is the next big thing. Apparently a delegation came from Korea, South Korea, to just check out what is India getting right. And the story, of course, was they thought steel. These guys are getting right in steel, and they went back and invested in steel. But the sensible thing they did was, we invested in public sector, they invested in private sector, and they got it right. But the point is, we were the next big thing in 65, and it was a dream we did not materialize, we did not fructify. So the future is bright, but it is not inevitable. We should not make policy mistakes.
It could be brighter.
That as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So let's balance it.
Yes, certainly. We have to call it a day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.